I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. From director Stefano Soyima and writer Taylor Sheridan comes the sequel to 2015's Sicario. Sicario, Day of the Soldado.
Adios.
I know who you are. You're the attorney whose family they killed.
Not they.
My father.
Hunt
And now you hunt them.
Adios.
There's proof the cartel helped the terrorists get to the border.
The president's adding drug cartels to the list of terrorist organizations.
You can understand how that will expand our ability to combat them.
You want to see this thing through? I'm gonna have to get dirty.
Dirty is exactly why you're here.
You're gonna help us start a war.
With who?
Everyone. No rules this time.
Your objective is to start a war between the Mexican cartels, not with the Mexican government.
This girl was witness to the mission, correct?
Yes, sir.
We can't risk her falling into the wrong hands. Clean the scene.
They want me to cut ties. You gotta get rid of her.
I can't do that.
Don't put me in that situation.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
I'm gonna need a strike team, 2 Blackhawks, drones with attack capability.
Where's the coup?
Mexico.
You have no reason to trust me. But trust in me is how you're gonna survive.
Good luck.
Luck doesn't live on this side of the border.
Sicario, Day of the Soldado, in theaters now. Hi everybody, this is Steve Owens from Fascination Street Podcast. I really appreciate your listening to the show. I'm having a lot of fun getting to talk to some really fascinating people, and I want to continue doing this, but I need your help. I need you to subscribe and tell people about the show. But the biggest thing you can do to help me is to rate and review the show on iTunes or wherever you listen through. As a special thank you, anyone who rates and or reviews the show, send me a screenshot as proof and I will mail you a set of 3 pair of silk cufflinks courtesy of my friends at Menlo House. You can send it via Twitter to @FascinationSTPD, via Instagram to FascinationStreetPod, or email me at FascinationStreetPod@gmail.com. I really appreciate all of you for listening and for helping. Thank you so much. Now let's get to this week's guest. Welcome back, guys. Today's episode is with comedian turned actor Dan Davidson. Dan has been a comedian for over 20 years and recently got into film and television acting. In this episode, we talk about getting started as a comedian and building that career into a sustainable income. And we also talk about making the transition to acting on television and film, including a role on NBC's Brave, as well as Sicario, Day of the Soldado, which is in theaters right now. Enjoy, guys. This is Dan Davidson.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
Well, hi, Dan. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me on Fascination Street. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I can't complain, I guess. It's been raining cats and dogs here all day long. And so, there's a river going down the middle of the street in front of my house. So, other than that,
Oh.
It's cool?
Oh, great, great. I've had nothing but heat following me all around the country here.
Oh, gross. I'm surprised you're not in San
Yeah.
Antonio, because it's always hot here, man.
Tends to be down there, yeah.
Yeah, it does. All right, Dan Davidson, you started out as a comedian for a really long time, and recently, I want to say recently, you embarked on an acting career. But first, let's talk about you. Where are you from, Dan?
Originally, I'm from a small town, Lafayette, Indiana, which is in between, like, Indianapolis and Chicago. Yeah, out in the country.
I've been there.
No, you haven't.
I have. My wife opens psychiatric hospitals all over the country, and she helped open a hospital in Lafayette, Indiana for the Springstone Company.
Oh, I stand correct. You have been there.
Aha! I went down to some sort of antique record stores in like the downtown area and found some really cool Frank Sinatra records down there.
Oh, very nice, very nice.
So Lafayette has a fond place in my heart because I collect Frank records, and I found a bunch of them in Lafayette. So that's awesome.
That's great, yeah.
So when did you decide that you wanted to be a stand-up?
I guess the seed was planted when I was in 8th grade. I got to stay up and watch Johnny Carson for the first time, and because I was sick. I didn't have to hit my bedtime because we had pretty strict bedtimes as children, you know. So I got to watch television. I mean, it's late night television, which is the first time, and I saw a comedian that performed on there, Charlie Callis, and it blew me away because I'm like, well, I didn't know what that thing is that he was doing, but I kind of did something like that at school with my friends, and so, you know, Johnny Carson interviewed him after, you know, he went over and paneled. He interviewed him and said, so you travel around doing stand-up comedy? I was like, okay. So at that point, there was a little seed planted, and so then I tended to hear similar comments from different people, some of them positive, some of them negative. Like, my friends would tell me that I should be a comedian, like in high school. You should be a comedian, you should be a comedian. And my teachers were always saying, what are you, a comedian? So it had a little more negative connotation to it. So then I started putting stuff together at that point. You know, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm hearing the same stuff, and I'm going to have to figure this out on my own, because the authority figures in school there's no guidance counselor pushing you into stand-up comedy, but they'll gladly put you into the workforce, you know. So I'm like, I guess it was 8th grade-ish. I knew I was going to do it. I didn't know how or why, or I knew why, but I didn't know how. But that's about the time that the seeds got planted and got fertilized a little bit in high school.
Well, I know that when I was in high school, my counselor, right around the same time, right around 8th grade, my counselor told me that if I wanted to, I could be the funniest guy working at the dry cleaning factory. So it's sort of the same thing.
Yeah, kind of. You'd be a rock star in the dry cleaning world.
Yes.
And it's kind of crazy how the arts or the creative process isn't as welcome, because I did one of my nieces interviewed me for a class she had when she was in early high school, and they interviewed people outside of normal careers, and then, you know, she interviewed me and, you know, did this report about me, and her teacher said, you can't be a comedian, that's not a thing. And I was just like, wow, that's just amazing how, you know, when I was growing up, I kept hearing people say, you can be whatever you want to be. You know, I don't know if that many people said it, but the people who did say it, it resonated with me. And so I kind of tucked that away in my life, and then kind of figured out how to get to where I needed to be ultimately.
Wow, that's crazy. What year was this that your niece's teacher said that that's not really a thing?
This was probably about maybe 10, somewhere between 10, 12 years ago, or something like that, yeah.
Oh, so right at the height of comedy?
Well, the height of comedy, actually, like with the big boom was like in the late 80s, early 90s. I just started coming into it as the boom was kind of over. And now it's gone through many different cycles throughout the years. But yeah, the huge boom was late 80s, where, I mean, you just open up a comedy club, there'd be a line out the door, and you could do, you know, shows from Tuesday to Sunday, and they'd all be sold out almost everywhere.
Nice.
So I came in right after the good times.
So you're growing up in Lafayette, Indiana, which is a super small town that almost nobody's ever heard of, and you decide you're going to be a stand-up comedian. Did you do stand-up in Lafayette? Like, is that where you started?
No. I'll tell you this. I was not. A lot of people assume that the comedians were the class clowns, but I was not one of those. I was a very shy person, in front of people. Around my friends, my close knit friends, I could loosen up and be funny, But like in large groups, I would get really small because I was the sixth of seven children. I'm sorry, I was the sixth of six children, and we were all within 7 years of age. So my family was very chaotic, and I was just this little child. It was just chaos for my parents, I'm sure. So like I didn't do. When I told my family that I was going to do comedy or at least go do open mic night, they just kind of, they didn't know how to take it. They just looked at me like, "You're the most shy kid ever. You can't be quiet and funny at the same time." That's kind of what their underlying thing. But I'm like, well, if you look at Charlie Chaplin, I think you can.
He was really quiet, that guy.
Super quiet and super funny. So there was no outlet to do that in my hometown. The closest place that I could find that was holding open mic night was in Indianapolis, a club called Crackers Comedy Club. So I hunted them down and called them, and I was scared to death even to make the phone call. I thought they were gonna, just like, "Oh, you're not funny," click, But I drove down to open mic nights like 3 weeks in a row. The first week I couldn't even stop in the parking lot. I just drove in the parking lot and drove right around and went right back home, which was, it's a 2-hour round trip. And then second week I did it, I went there and I stopped the car and then started it back up and went home. And all my friends, I told them I was going to be doing this, and they're like, you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. And then the third week I went, my brother and my roommate showed up. So then they went into the club. I had to go. There was no option not to go. So I, went up there with 5 minutes, and then it's just a blur at this point. At that point, it just goes so fast. So, but I got a couple laughs. That was enough for me.
So when you were putting together that first 5 minutes, how did you go about doing that?
I would just, the thing that tends to help, I think, in the part of creation is it's kind of let things happen. Just let things happen. I would just let things come to my mind, and then there was really not that much structure. You just float from one subject to the next, and don't worry about having a nice clean. Later on I started worried, breaking down the structure of stuff. But like in the beginning, I just let whatever come out, and then you just kind of rehearse it. And I think it's going to be funny. I'm pretty sure it's funny to me. We'll see if it's going to be funny to them. And then I created a fake little microphone. It's like maybe like a broomstick, and I put a wad of like masking tape on the end of it to be similar to having a microphone in my hand, because it's not something that you're used to. If you go to open mic nights and you watch people get on stage for the first time, they don't even know how to hold a microphone. They don't know how to stand in front of lights with really bright lights shining on you. So I was just trying to practice all that stuff as much as I could, and hopefully my memory will serve me well when I get up there. If I do a bit that doesn't get a laugh, you got to keep moving. I just kind of let it flow, and I tend to still do that to this day, when I'm creating.
Well, that's really cool. So your brother and his roommate are at this show, and did they laugh? Like at the end of that, once you finally had done it and you breathed a sigh of relief and you stopped shaking after the show, what did they say? Like, what was the conversation like?
Well, it was my brother and my roommate. It wasn't my brother's roommate.
Sorry.
So my brother, I just talked briefly with him after the show, and then he went on, and then my roommate and I went out to eat. And, it's like you don't realize, because I knew this is what I needed to do, and I knew that I had to get over that shyness in order to make that leap, my whole body was just pumped full of endorphins. I was on cloud nine that I did this thing that I've known that I was going to need to do that I've been sort of had in the back of my head for like 7-8 years. My roommate at the time, he was like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. He didn't know how big it was for me. But, with all those endorphins and getting laughs in front of people is like huge. It's like a drug, It's very addictive. And so I'm like, and it probably was my perception of what actually happened was probably skewed because of all those endorphins. Because I'm like, did you hear the reaction when I said this? And it was just thunderous. He's just like, well, yeah, they laughed. And I'm like, no, it was thunder. So I had to go back and keep getting more thunder.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how high were you after that show, just from that experience? So pretty high, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like it's an experience that you've never done, and you got all this stuff that's been kind of stirring up for years. And I knew that I had to make that leap. Just being such a shy kid, I had to overcome it. And so, yeah, I was on cloud nine after that show. And then I started the whole process over. The next week I went back. I was still scared to death. Back to starting over. So, and then you just ultimately, you get over that. I mean, it's every once in a while there's a little nerve or something in my, I never know what's going to truly happen. So you kind of have to be open, but I'm pretty confident with the outcome nowadays.
Sure. So tell me about the first time you got paid to do stand-up comedy.
I think I might have got $15 to do, and they, this is not in a comedy club, but it was just a self-produced type of show. I think the guy's name was KJ Earl. He saw me a couple times on the open mic nights, and he's like, hey, I'm doing a show like in the basement of a piano bar or something like that. And I got paid. That was the first time. And then, so I was like, oh man, I'm in showbiz. So, doing 10 minutes, then I was like nervous about that. I'm doubling my time. That was a long time ago. But yeah, KJ Earl, that name, I haven't probably thought about the name since then.
That's funny. So how long until you were able to, I guess, pay all your bills with just stand-up comedy?
Let's see. I had a roommate, or I had a friend of mine who was also, he started open mic night before me, and so he had a little body of work under him by the time I came on to the Indianapolis scene, and then he wanted to move to Chicago, and so I had to save some money, and then I started doing it full time, probably close to 2 years after the first time I got on stage.
Oh, kick ass. That's really not that long.
Yeah, but the story is like during the boom when everybody would just open up a comedy club and everybody, I heard stories about people who went up like one open mic night and they were on the road doing comedy, in the Midwest anyway. That was like really big. So it took me a little longer than I had planned, and you got to figure it out as there's not really a great business model, there's not that many tutors, nobody's pulling you along, like in other fields, you have a mentor, and there's really not much of that going on, because in comedy it's like pretty much every dog eat dog, everybody's working for themselves,
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it took a couple years before I was out on the road full time.
Well, currently, how many shows do you do a year, would you say?
I've backed off a lot. I got married and came out to Denver. I had my whole network of everybody that I knew that I worked for was all back east, kind of in the Chicago, Indiana area, and the whole East Coast, And so when I got married and moved out here, it was a little different structure of the way it is. There's a couple comedy clubs here that do really well called Comedy Works, but they like to groom their people from like open mic nights and then bring them up through the club. And then there was an improvisation that was in town, and I'd been working for the improv chain for a long time, so I kind of naturally just went to the improv. And so I kind of support bigger names when they come into town here, and that way I don't get stuck out on the road when acting jobs and stuff come up. Like if I'm supporting somebody else, like a bigger name, then I can actually get off of that ticket if I have like an acting job or something that pops up. So I've been kind of keeping this comedy a little bit limited, so it doesn't get into too much trouble when I'm transitioning into the acting world.
Well, that's cool. Tell me about when you decided that you were going to switch into and start an acting career.
Always wanted to do it. I mean, always loved watching, people on TV like act stuff. Oh, when it's great, you don't even know it's acting. It's real. I heard some other comedians, they had done some commercials and stuff like that. And so I went in, when I was living in Indianapolis, I went into a talent agency, not knowing really what to do or what to say. And I just kind of went in and stood in front of them and said, hey, can I do this, whatever stuff? And they just kind of looked at me like, do you have any headshots? I'm like, yes, I do. Pulled them out, and they said, okay, we can send you out for commercial stuff. And had to, go in and do auditions and do all that kind of stuff. And pretty quickly, I booked my first job, and it was for a national commercial. That's when I was like, oh, this is great. This is great. I was doing comedy, like I think in Vegas or something, and when they wanted to shoot that commercial. And then they changed the shoot date to when I was available, which does not happen. That does not happen. But I just, since they did it for me, I thought that's the way it always is. Usually they'll go to the next actor if you're, not available for when the shoot is. So it was a pretty big shoot. It was at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We had like 300 extras. We had pit crews. We had it was a big set, and I was the only one speaking in that commercial, and I had no training. I'd never been on a set, a professional set. I've never been on even a non-professional set at that point. And so it was kind of a struggle. I thought I was going to go in and just say my line like once or twice and just be done like within a half an hour, but that's not how stuff works in the movie making world, or commercial world. You have to do it many, many times, and you have to give the editors all kinds of options to get what they want, So every time things weren't going, when they'd say cut, reset, I took it as a personal failure, and I became less and less open as as an actor. So that was kind of a struggle. So I wanted to get some on-camera training, but Indianapolis really didn't have enough it wasn't a big enough market to support that. So once I got married and came out here to Denver, then I had access. There's a lot of on-camera training places. So, and that was probably 2010 when I started studying acting. So, and I've been studying ever since.
Gotcha. I read somewhere that you let yourself be tased on a morning show. Is that true?
Yeah, I did. That was, I think, in Myrtle Beach, if I remember. Well, they used my little chauvinism against me. When you're doing comedy, you're promoting your show. You go in and do morning radio shows to try and get people to come out and see your show. So I was on this morning radio program, and I had known that DJ from another market that he was in that I used to work. And so I was in there, and he's like, hey, they had a taser in the studio, and they're like, hey, is there any way we tase you? I'm like, no, you're not going to tase me. It's just crazy. As a kid, I never even put my tongue on the 9-volt battery. And so they're like, oh, we had Miss South Carolina in here last week, and she let us tase her. And I'm like, well, okay, I guess if you do a girl, I'm weaker than a girl. And so they tased me. And it was pretty crazy, yeah.
Were you married at that time?
No, I wasn't married at the time, but I started dating my wife long distance at that time, and it's really crazy. She loved watching that video on YouTube of me getting tased. She just loved it. It made her laugh so hard. I'm like, I don't know if we can continue this relationship. If you're laughing at my suffering. But yes, that did happen. Wow, I don't know how you found that information.
I'm magic. That's how. I think that maybe you could have just said, "Oh, Miss North Carolina did it. Was she stupid?" There's no
Yeah,
way.
I wasn't thinking. It was in the morning, and I'm not a morning person.
There is no way I would let someone do that. Not for free, for sure.
Well, I was also trying to get people in to come see my show, so
Yes, that's a good point.
you gotta move tickets, yeah.
Yeah, you do. So let's talk about your recent foray into acting. Tell me about The Brave on NBC.
NBC, yeah, it was kind of crazy because my agent sent me a note in the evening, maybe a Thursday evening, saying, "Hey, you got an audition for this part on The Brave." And The Brave was already running, and I think his numbers were doing pretty well. And I'm like, I look at the audition, I don't even get a script, right? I'm playing a Russian person, and I have to speak Russian. And so, I don't know if you know, there's no Russian alphabet like ours. So all I have is a phonetic breakdown of what I'm supposed to say and what it means. And then I have a tape of a person saying those words, this woman that's saying these words, and she's going so fast, I can't understand what she's saying. And so I almost turned down the audition because I'm like, I can't speak Russian. It's not a thing. And then I remembered, I've been taking classes with this coach from Los Angeles, a guy named David John, and he also teaches like master level at the Groundlings in Los Angeles. And he always makes us do these crazy exercises in front of an entire classroom where we have to become like experts on a certain subject, or with, doesn't matter how little we know about that subject, we have to stand up there and pretend like, and just be confident. Just say everything with confidence, no matter how dumb it sounds. And I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe if I could fool the casting director to think that I know how to speak Russian, then I might have a shot at this part. So I went in for the read, and then I walk into the audition room, and the casting director's like, she's like, we have some notes from the director about the script. And I'm like, well, I have to apologize. I don't have a script. I just have the phonetic breakdown of what I'm saying here. She's like, oh, do you want to see the script? And I'm like, yeah, for context, I have no idea where I am in who I'm talking to in the script. And so she gives it to me. She gives me 5 minutes to work on it, and we come back in and put it on tape for her. And she's like, her and her assistant were like, oh wow, you speak Russian? And I'm like, no, I don't actually. I'm learning to speak German, but it's not the same language at all. And so she's like, let's do it again. And yeah, we don't have any notes for you. That was great. And so did it again. Then within a couple hours, I knew that I was being sent. What they say is, you're being sent to network. You have to get network approval. They have to look at what you did and make sure you're okay to be on their show. And then I had it booked within a day, and then shot it in a couple days later. And got to be on set with Anne Heche. I mean, how bad can that be?
How cool is that?
Super, super cool. It's just like, I've done a small body of acting work. I'm trying to, build this resume and get it going. And then it's so awesome to be on set when you have a stand-in. It's just great being on set, and they're just like, you let the stand-in do all the be there for the camera and the lighting and all that stuff, and then you just get to walk in and do your job. I also had that Russian coach on set as well, so that was super awesome to be able to speak with this person and have her like fix any the way I'm pronouncing words and stuff.
Well, that had to have helped for sure. At least your confidence, if nothing else.
Oh yeah. So then I'm like, all right, bring on anything that I'm not comfortable with, and then I'll give it a shot.
I don't know if you know this, but sometimes even a stand-in turns into a star. Oscar from The Office, Oscar Nunez.
Oh, okay.
When he started his career, he was a stand-in for Adam Carolla.
Oh.
Isn't that weird?
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I was on the, we haven't talked about it yet, but it's playing right now, the Sicario.
Oh, we'll get there.
Day of the Soldado. Okay. The stand-in for Josh Brolin, I don't know if he's turned into something bigger, but I just saw him out on the red carpet for the premiere. I was like, oh, okay.
Really?
Because I'd seen that actor elsewhere. He's also represented by my agent, so I'd seen him before. I'm like, oh, okay. But I didn't have time to talk to him at the premiere. I was being interviewed.
Oh, that's really cool. Did you say you were master's level?
At the Groundlings?
Yeah, at the Groundlings?
No, I'm not. I study under a master level, a couple different master level coaches from the Ground.
Gotcha. How did you swing that?
It is kind of crazy because I live in Denver, and there is a woman who teaches like the business of acting in Colorado here, and takes a bunch of actors, and you go through like a 2 month of classes with her to break down the business side of acting. And she used to manage the Groundlings, the Groundlings. So she had access to these excellent teachers, and then she would bring them out she still brings them out to Denver to teach the actors here. So we might have better access to higher level coaching than people in Los Angeles because, I study under David John and Patrick Bristow, and these guys don't even hardly teach anymore in Los Angeles because they're just too busy working. They're off the charts, and they're great teachers. So it's kind of weird that here in Denver we have access to those master level teachers or even above master level.
That's really cool. It seems like Colorado is really developing like a footprint in acting and filming things.
Well, before I moved here, back in the 90s, they used to have a great amount of television shows that used to shoot here because, the scenery is fantastic and the climate is great. But nowadays, we're trying here. We're trying pretty hard, but there's not a lot of incentive for productions to come here, like big productions. Like there's other markets like Georgia, Atlanta is a huge market outside of, New York and Los Angeles. And then Albuquerque is a great, New Mexico is a great market as well. Texas kind of was for a little while, but I think they've also lost some incentive. Like what happens is, I don't know if you understand the whole incentive process in the filmmaking. Like Colorado will only give back a limited amount, maybe 15%, maybe 10 to anywhere between 10 and 20% of a production's what they spend. The state will kick back the money to the production that actually spends it. And what happens is Colorado has a limited amount of incentive money that they put up each year. And so what happens is if a big production comes in town, like The Hateful Eight came into town, and they pretty much gobbled up all the incentive money for a whole year. So no other production was going to get any kickback money, any refund money. So that the other states, Georgia, Louisiana, they have a great incentive program, and New Mexico, they have a really good incentive program. So the big productions from Los Angeles and stuff come to those markets to shoot their movies. So Colorado is a little bit of a disadvantage for the crew, the casting and crew members. But we're still trying to fight to get what we can get approved by the state.
Wow. Well, thank you for all of that insight. I knew a little bit, but I think you explained it really well. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk about in theaters right now, Sicario 2, Day of the Soldado.
Day of the Soldado. That is correct.
Now I saw the first one, and it was great, but I don't feel like it did enough box office to warrant a second one.
Yeah, I think it did well, but it was like a slow burn. It wasn't like a big release and made a ton of money. But I think it kept getting enough. It's almost. It's way bigger than a cult following. Some of those smaller movies that just keep getting sold or keep getting watched. It was doing a little bit better than that. It was such a good movie, just an incredible movie because I knew some people that were in it. And, I just kept hearing the name of it. And then once I got around to watching it, I'm like, oh, man, that was a beautiful piece of work, Yeah, I was a little surprised. That they spent as much as they did on the sequel. And they pretty much instantly kicked it into a franchise, because I don't know if you've seen the Day of the Soldado, but it pretty much leads to the next movie. That's where they're going.
Now, I think the first one was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture, I think. And
I'm not 100% sure on that, but
I'm not 100% either, but I feel like that's why my wife and I watched it, because we always watch every Best Picture nominee before the awards. So I feel like I said, I might be wrong, but I feel like it was nominated. So it's set up for a third installment, but I'm pretty sure I heard somewhere that the director of 2 said he's not coming back for 3 because of
Stefano Salima. Yeah, I don't know. I barely saw him at the premiere, and I didn't have a chance to talk to him. He's being swarmed by so many people.
Sure.
So I have no information on that.
Right.
I would love to tell you everything I know, but that would make for a short podcast.
So tell me about how was it shooting that? Because that is by far the biggest thing that you've done, right, in front of a camera.
That is correct. Yeah, and it's like out of sequence. I actually shot my scene with. I'm in a scene with Josh Brolin, and I had shot that prior to working with Anne Heche on The Brave. So, I was super stoked. That was might have been the end of 2016 when I had shot that. And so, I was like begging for that thing to come out within 6 months. But, it's such a huge production with so many working parts, in order to edit, and they're recording as much as they can with the original script, and then they changed the script. They were very secretive about everything on set. As an actor, I didn't get to see the whole script. I never got to see the script. I only got to see 2 scenes worth of, maybe 7, 8 pages or something like that. And for other actors that were small supporting roles as well, they only got to see what they were doing. Initially, when I went in to read I read for 2 parts in the film, and it's kind of crazy because I really spent more time working on the audition for the part that I didn't book. So I was like, I really wanted to play this character. So I'm like, oh, this is meaty. This is really, really meaty. And so I worked on that. And when you get your audition, you only have maybe, you're lucky if you get more than a full day to work on it, because everything moves pretty quickly in the bit. So you have to get the sides, you have to get memorized, you have to make your choices on what you're going to do in your audition. So I went and auditioned for this part, or 2 parts. I wanted the one that I wanted. I didn't get booked for, but it turns out it worked out very nicely because they edited that storyline out of the film. Had I booked that part, then I wouldn't be in the film.
How fortuitous.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Where did that shoot?
We shot in Albuquerque, and they also shot in Mexico as well.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I was at the premiere. I was at the premiere in Los Angeles on the 26th, and its national release was on the 29th.
Well, what did you think about the finished product?
I think it's great. I think it's a little bit different. Probably this one has, it seems like a lot more action in it. The first one, we kind of lived through Emily Blunt's character. But then this one, it was removed from that. And then we have, it was pretty action-based. It didn't really slow down. When my scene came up onto the screen, I was sitting with this other actress at the premiere, and, she's like, congratulations, whispering. But I wanted to say something, but the movie moved so fast, there was no time that I could just lean over and whisper to her, about anything. It just moves very fast. And I think it's a great product. I think for a different director to come in and take over the vibe of the original film, it's a completely different story. And it's even a standalone story by itself. You don't need to know what happened in the first movie to watch the second movie. But I think Stefano did a wonderful job taking over this franchise.
Well,
now, where it goes, we don't know.
Very cool. Now, we don't normally have billboards for movies down here in San Antonio. I know LA, like every single billboard is for a movie or a TV show, but here we don't really have that. But there are a couple of Day of the Soldado billboards, and the art is stunning for this poster. Yeah. Oh my God, it's amazing.
Yeah, I was just in Los Angeles, and
Very cool. What do you got coming up? What's on the horizon for Dan Davidson?
What's on the horizon? I'm doing a couple. I'm doing some private. I'm doing some private shows, from comedy shows, and then I'm also doing some writing for some film. I'm writing a short film right now. It's a comedy, and so that's kind of a new process for me to write for this little the box, the frame of a television. When you're doing stand-up, it's very. I know that environment. I've worked in that medium for many, many years. 20 plus years. So to write for a screen is very different. So I'm like figuring things out and, understanding the story structure of storytelling on camera. So that's my big thing right now that I've been really focusing on is the writing. And I'm going to produce it, and probably direct it. I'm not sure if I will or not, but I'll probably try to direct it. I have to take my cap off to those big-time actors who direct and act in their own product. Because, the people who do it well, I got to tip my cap to them, because that's a lot of responsibility, to be that good of an actor where you can just switch hats and just, be in front of the camera and behind the camera, and then, sometimes on the same day. I don't know if you've been on sets before, but it takes just a ton of energy to make a film, even a small film. So I'm excited about that and learning the whole process of taking something from script to final production, and then put it into some film festivals and see how it's received.
Well, that sounds kick-ass. Is there a name for this project, or is it a secret right now?
Well, no, I don't want to release it just yet.
Okay.
Because the name that I have for it, I think it'll probably stay with it, but it kind of alludes to what might happen, and I don't want anybody to get any hold of those ideas and start doing something on their own, because somebody might grab it and work faster than me,
Well, that makes sense. Dan, as we're heading out of here, tell everybody where they can find you on social media.
Social media, you can go to facebook.com/GoSeeDan. That'll give you access to me. I am also at the Dan Davidson, but it's spelled on Twitter and Instagram as well.
Sweet. And do you have a dandavidson.net?
I do have dandavidson.net, but I'm in the process of having that redone, so it's a lot more social media friendly, so it'll kind of bring you to all the outlets and stuff. But I'm in the process of getting that done. But yes, dandavidson.net is put it in your browser and put it as a bookmark.
Cool. All of those social media tags and that web address will be in the show notes, guys. So just scroll down and they will all be there. Make sure to reach out and say hello to Dan and tell him how much you enjoyed this interview. Before I let you go, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't bring up?
No, not necessarily. No, I think you did your work. You did your work, and you surprised me with a couple things.
Haha, cool. Well, have a great rest of your day and try not to tase yourself anymore.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Dan. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
What's up, guys? I'm back with this month's Menlo Club promo code. Menlo Club, as you know, is a subscription-based clothing service for men that I've been using for over 2.5 years. Every month, for $60, tax and shipping included, they send you a surprise package. In that package is everything from jeans to t-shirts to short sleeve button-ups, long sleeve button-ups, shorts, socks, belts, swimsuits even workout gear. Did I mention shoes? Every month, they pick a couple of those different things and they send them to you, all for $60. But when you sign up, if you use promo code FSP, as in Fascination Street Podcast, you'll get 50% off your first month, plus free socks and a free pair of sunglasses for the month of July. How cool is that? Just for putting FSP. Just because you're a listener. So go to menlohouse.com and sign up. Use promo code FSP and you'll be happy you did. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.